Radio Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee. I'm Charles Purcell. This is The Log. You and I don't talk that much about the wars in Ukraine and Gaza, not because they're not important, not because they're not major news, but in a sense they don't fit the traditional definition of news, that is, something that's new. That's the problem with these two wars. It's the same story week after week, day after day, month after month, year after year. It's horrible. It just continues with almost nothing new to say. And I guess that's why sometimes we forget around here. And I don't know, I apologize. I guess I should try harder. But the fact is, in Gaza, killing continues well after the so-called peace agreement, which, we around here never had any faith in. Hundreds of Palestinians killed. As far as Ukraine, all the back and forth negotiations, again, I hate to be the cynic in the room. I'm always looking for a reason to be optimistic. I'm always looking for a silver lining. My God, the Ukraine war, and especially our role in it, there's just been nothing at all to cheer about. We talked about this new international doctrine laid out last week by the regime. The United States, officially now, pretty much just siding with Russia. This new world order is one in which the regime is very happy to be an authoritarian, non-democratic regime as long as we get to be the big boss of our neighborhood. So, might makes right in the Western Hemisphere, which we own, control, do with what we will. That's the philosophy of the new doctrine, a callback to regional imperial power. Very happy to have Russia as a partner in this world philosophy, in this worldview. Russia gets to run over its neighbors, invade them at will. Russia can attack Ukraine. The United States can attack Venezuela, maybe Colombia, maybe Mexico. China can attack Taiwan. That's the new way of the world now. We are one of a handful of authoritarian regimes, and we rule our neighborhood. We've seen how much this regime has fallen in love with the dictators of the Middle East. No respect for Europe. That's done. That's over. That alliance is dead. No respect for democracy. Democracy is the very opposite of what we stand for now. And again, when I say we, I mean we as a nation, the regime. I'm not talking about us. That's why we have to have a person-to-person, people-to-people anarchist revolution where we turn our backs on our respective leaders. Yeah, our movement has to be global. That's why we have to abolish borders. That's why we have to embrace social anarchy on a global scale. We have to get with our international neighbors, person-to-person, people-to-people. I don't see any other way out. Because we've got a handful of authoritarian regimes now where power rules. Might makes right. And in the case of Gaza, we have to appease the Christian right. That's an important part of their coalition. And the Christian right is all about Israel because of end times prophecy. These wackadoodles are 100% committed to Israel because of the role they play in fulfilling prophecy. Otherwise, how are the good Christians going to be lifted up into heaven? They need Israel to play their part in the Passion Play. They continue to use anti-Semitism cynically as a weapon against those who call for justice. And then regarding Ukraine, or the Middle East, or potential wars with South America, well, that's just a win-win-win for those who build and sell the arms, military weapons. So yeah, we sell arms to everybody. We haven't given Ukraine a penny now for how long has it been? Months and months and months. We've just been selling arms to Europe, and then Europe gives aid to Ukraine. So as I said, there's nothing new here. It's not news. It's all just the never-ending headlines that don't seem to change day after day, week after week, month after month. And then you could add one more little wrinkle, I guess. It's been reported by the Telegraph in London that it's increasingly clear the Americans don't care about the European position regarding Ukraine. They say the Europeans can do whatever they want. They literally don't care, as long as they can sell arms. And Witkoff and Kushner are all about winning multi-billion-dollar deals to develop energy and rare earth minerals in Russia, Ukraine, and the Arctic. Billion-dollar deals are being dangled in these so-called negotiations. Moscow could reshape the economic map of Europe while driving a wedge between America and its traditional allies, according to reporting from the Wall Street Journal. This is the way of the regime. Power and grift. That's the world we're in now. Because we're no longer a democracy, if we ever were. We don't even pretend. There's a global nonprofit called Civicus that puts out their findings a couple times a year. It's a coalition of global civil society organizations. Well, they've downgraded the United States civic health rating from narrowed to obstructed. The group cited a sharp deterioration of fundamental freedoms in the country, following a year of sweeping executive actions, restrictive laws, and aggressive crackdowns on free speech and dissent. The shift comes just months after Civicus's July assessment, which rated the U.S. as narrowed, one step above obstructed. Civicus assigns each country a score based on civic space conditions using 5 classifications: open, narrowed, obstructed, repressed, and closed. So that's the direction we're moving in. And I think it needs to be said out loud. We're still trending in a very particular direction here. And if anybody thinks it can't get worse before it gets better, because we all hope it's going to get better and we're all fighting to make it better, but if anybody thinks this can't get worse, well, that's just head in the sand thinking. According to the group, an obstructed ranking applies to countries where civic space is heavily contested. Civil society organizations still exist, but state authorities undermine them, including through illegal surveillance, bureaucratic harassment, and demeaning public statements. Yeah, any of that sound familiar? The group's Secretary General Mandeep Tiwana said, as the USA prepares to mark 250 years since the American Revolution, we urge the government to course correct and uphold the civic freedoms enshrined in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. With its new classification, the U.S. now joins 39 other countries rated obstructed this year, including Hungary, Brazil, and South Africa. Yeah, this is a global problem. Europe is hanging on. You can still rightfully call most European nations democracies. Japan, South Korea, Australia. Now it gets tough. Can you name any others? Yeah, this is a global problem, which is why it needs a global solution. And I'm convinced more than ever that we, the people, have to coordinate with our international compatriots. We have to get together across international borders, ignore those borders, and stand up against our respective so-called leaders. Because that way of doing things is just over. Do you remember back in September we talked about the NSPM 7, National Security Presidential Memorandum? It's kind of a presidential executive order on steroids. It called on the federal government to crack down on anyone deemed un-American, any group, any individual. And they defined the people they wanted to target as those expressing, quote, opposition to law and immigration enforcement, extreme views in favor of mass migration and open borders, adherence to radical gender ideology, as well as anti-Americanism, anti-capitalism, and anti-Christianity. So those are the parameters, and they themselves in the regime decide how to define anti-Americanism. They're the ones who define anti-capitalism. They're the ones who decide which views are extreme regarding borders, migration, gender ideology. And then anyone who takes these views, then they can just label a terrorist. They can arrest them, they can jail them, they can deport them. Well, it's in the news this week because Attorney General Pam Bondi has apparently drafted a memo directing the FBI to, quote, compile a list of groups or entities engaging in acts that may constitute domestic terrorism. I don't know about you, but everything on that list describes me and this program. We oppose the current law and immigration enforcement, the way it's being handled right now. Our views on migration and borders would be considered extreme relative to the regime. Our adherence to gender ideology would be considered radical in comparison to the regime. I'm certainly anti-capitalist. I have been for years, and I've said it proudly, and I've made my case, and I continue every week, every program. I am a proud, avowed anti-capitalist. I'm not anti-Christian in the sense that, if you want to be Christian, more power to you, go ahead. But I disavow all of it. I was raised a Christian, have nothing at all good to say about organized Christianity in this country. So, yeah, in a sense, for me personally, I am anti-Christian. All right, so I guess I'm a terrorist. I guess this program is a vehicle for terrorism, according to the regime. This is what I'm talking about when I say it can get much, much worse, and very likely will get much, much worse until we win, until we beat them, until we defeat them. Yeah. People can and will be arrested. You think it's going to stop with immigrants of color, which is where they started? Racial profiling approved, stamp of approval from the Supreme Court. Oh, well, they'll never take citizens. Well, they blew that up pretty quickly. Yeah, you think they're going to just stop with one group? You don't think they're going to gleefully and enthusiastically shut down local podcasts, advocacy groups? Yeah, this presidential memo has been given teeth. The Attorney General of the United States of America has directed the FBI to compile a list of groups and entities engaging in what they define as domestic terrorism. And their definition of domestic terrorism is basically pulled right from my program description. Me and 1,000 other organizations, podcasts, individuals. This authoritarian regime is real. And just because the regime is so filled with clowns and cranks, I think some of us take it a little too lightly about how much damage they can still do. The Warner Brothers sale is back in the news. We thought that Netflix had a done deal to buy them, but not so fast. Now, Paramount is launching a so-called hostile bid. And not only is it Paramount wants to buy Warner Brothers Discovery, which includes HBO, of course, and CNN and many others. Their little investment partnership includes Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law. It includes Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia. Paramount already in league with the authoritarian regime, the Ellison family, father and son. So just another step in the authoritarian playbook, controlling media. Consolidates power, will certainly cost more for consumers. That's the least of the issues with this deal. Opportunities for bribery and corruption throughout this process. Foreign influence in American media. And who gets to decide the winner in this bidding war? The orange meat puppet himself, as directed by Stephen Miller and Russell Vogt and the court of feudal oligarchs. Yeah, an extremely small, just a tiny handful of powerful men, you can count them on one hand, are going to decide the immediate future of American media. You think a harshly worded letter from Chuck Schumer might help? You think Cory Booker doing a 24-hour filibuster on the Senate floor will put the kibosh on this deal? Maybe Hakeem Jeffries should go sit on the Capitol steps and have a marathon podcast about it. And that'll help. No, there's only one thing powerful enough to stop what's happening. And that's the power of 340 million Americans coming together and absolutely refusing to allow it to happen. If you're paying for a media subscription right now, cancel every subscription you have right now. Cancel your Netflix, cancel your Paramount, cancel your Spotify, cancel them all. You don't need them. Music, media, film, any sort of news or information or entertainment that can be delivered digitally must now and forever be free. And we can make that happen simply by demanding it. We just have to stand up and say so. Because a half a dozen wildly wealthy men have absolutely no power against us. They live and they breathe on the billions of dollars they can throw around, and the power that buys them, that's their life and breath. And we can cut off their supply. We have the power to do it, just by simply saying so. We don't have to throw a fit. We don't have to pull a gun. We don't have to holler and shout. We just need to click on cancel. Cancel all of it. The cabinet of the regime continues to make ridiculous headlines. This insane little promotion that RFK Jr. and Sean Duffy, the transportation secretary, held in the airport. They had a little pull-up contest. Yeah, Sean Duffy and RFK Jr. think that they can improve airports by having areas where you can work out. They're just... And the funny thing is, they're bragging about these great innovative ideas and using $1 billion. They have $1 billion budget to do this. Never mentioning the fact that they're getting this funding from the Biden administration infrastructure bill law. Kristi Noem, people are thinking maybe she might be the first to go. It's amazing. Nobody's been fired yet. It's been almost a year. But among all the crooks and cranks and clowns, Kristi Noem, the reason they don't like Kristi Noem, mostly it's because she's not moving quickly enough. They want these concentration camps built. They want more arrests, and Kristi Noem's Homeland Security Department is just not moving fast enough on arresting brown people and putting them in concentration camps. She's not meeting her quotas. So Stephen Miller is not happy with Kristi Noem. Yeah, you can be a joke. You can be a crank and a clown and a crook, and you can be everything. You can be incompetent. It doesn't matter. But yeah, I want my 5,000 arrests every day, and I want my concentration camps built. Kristi Noem isn't getting it done. And apparently she's not being cruel enough. Even though we see stories every day, just heard recent reports about so-called alligator Alcatraz, the dismal conditions, literal torture happening. And then these just ridiculous, sad stories like the one from Boston, where there were people literally in line for their ceremony to take the oath of citizenship. They've gone through all the process, and they were literally pulled out of line by ICE and arrested moments before they raised their hand and took their oath. These are the stories that are happening every day. Speaking of incompetence from the cabinet, Secretary of War Crimes Pete Hegseth refusing to release the videotape of that second strike on the boat off of Venezuela, which we've been talking about for a couple of weeks. Congress is now demanding. So, yeah, we find these little moments of good news. Oh, well, okay, some Republicans are actually doing the right thing. I guess we can take some pleasure in that. It's it's like the Epstein files. We got bipartisan dissatisfaction with the regime, and they're demanding release of that video. We'll see what happens. This has been the first time you and I have talked in quite a while where there wasn't an update. The total remains 22 or maybe 23 boats and 87 murder victims, which was the same I reported last time we spoke. Yeah, but the whole problem here is that when the orange meat puppet is gone, and he's going to be gone for one of any number of reasons, he's going to die, or he's going to be impeached, or he's going to actually leave after the 28 election. I still don't think, if he's alive, he's staying. That's what I still think. But for whatever reason, he will leave at some point. Maybe he dies. Maybe he's impeached. Maybe he actually leaves in 2028. Regardless, the cabal will absolutely continue. And they will continue under all of the new norms that they've created. The new power structure, both domestic and foreign. Power will remain consolidated. The Supreme Court just this week heard arguments about the so-called unitary executive, and it looks very much like they're once again going to hand him unlimited power. The particulars of this one was his right to fire personnel from so-called independent agencies. And it's really, this one isn't complicated. It's not hard to understand. Things like the Federal Trade Commission, Federal Election Commission, Federal Communications Commission, these so-called independent agencies were created by Congress. Their missions were defined by Congress. The members of Congress cannot legislate every unforeseeable detail, so they created these independent agencies to carry out the rules and regulations legislated by Congress. Technically, they fall under the executive branch because that's the executive's job. The president's job, as very clearly delineated in Article 2 of the Constitution, is to execute the laws as legislated by Congress. So the idea that the president would somehow have the right to use those agencies to carry out his own quasi-legislation, to carry out his agenda, it just doesn't make any sense. If you skim the Constitution, you understand this. And yet the Supreme Court looks like it's going to do it again. It's going to embrace the so-called unitary executive theory, which is this bogus idea that somehow ultimate power resides in one single human being elected to the presidency. The founders never intended this. It takes a huge stretch of imagination to think that they did. Yeah, this is exactly the opposite of what we need. Giving the president more power? No. The president needs to have much, much less power. Government itself needs to have less power. Given the opportunity to govern ourselves, we could do an infinitely better job of it. What frightens me most about all of this is that we've all been changed and that there's no going back. That's my greatest fear. We've all become cynical, we've become jaded, we've become coarsened in our discourse, we've become crude, we've become closed-minded, we've been jerked around so much that all we can think of is our own personal well-being, our own personal revenge or retribution. Well, if this is the way it is now, I just got to get mine. That's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid that we've all been changed. That's my greatest fear. My greatest hope is that I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong about that. I hope we have the strength, I hope we have the personal fortitude to stand up and know what's right and to say what's right. But the damage done by the regime, and it's been plenty, and there's a huge potential for a lot more damage before it turns around. The damage done by the regime cannot ever be undone by the before times business as usual. So I think it's really important to remind ourselves where we are right now in this moment. There's a big shift happening, kind of back to old-fashioned politics, especially since the Democrats have had some successes here, and especially because the regime is coming up against some real resistance. So to sort of oversimplify it, year one was all about fulfilling Project 2025, which they've been very successful at. According to some studies I've seen, approximately 50% of the Project 2025 agenda has been successfully enacted. So year one was about that. Purging, replacing them with loyalists, consolidating power. And then, of course, there's just the grift. You can name 100 different areas there. Crypto schemes and the ridiculous ballroom that shouldn't cost more than at most $100 million. It's up to over $350 million now, which is pure grift. So that was all year one. Year two now, and this is the shift I'm talking about, they're going to put a lot more emphasis on campaign-style domestic politics. So the Orange Menace does a campaign-style rally in Pennsylvania. We're going to see a lot more of that. The face they put forward would be a lot more domestic stuff, and especially the economy. They'll just continue to lie and lie. Oh, believe me, they'll still continue the Project 2025 agenda, but that's going to be more under the radar. They're still going to continue the chummy relationship with their fellow authoritarian dictators, but not so much in front of the cameras. This next year, you can expect a lot of campaign-style rhetoric and rallies. The regime is trying to talk about the economy. It's all lies, lies, lies. So the shift has begun. That's what I'm saying. And we have to be clear about where we are, because I'm really worried, even if the Democrats win, as they have been winning with these special elections, and if they win, almost certainly will win the House in the midterms. They even have a chance at the Senate. And even if, looking forward to 2028, the Democrats win the White House, I'm really worried about Democrats winning for the wrong reasons. And then this horrible kind of 1 step forward, 10 steps back situation we're in will continue. So I'm out of time for today, but let's pick it up there next time. Let's talk about straight politics. Why even Democratic wins, yes, they may put a pause on the emergency, but I have zero faith that the Democratic Party, even if they get the trifecta, even if they get House, Senate, and White House, I have zero faith that they could undo the damage that's been done. And the so-called new norms will continue to churn under the surface, continuing to do damage to the system and to everyday Americans. I have no faith in the Democrats that they can turn that around. Yeah, they can hold serve for a few years, but that doesn't change our direction. The siren song you're going to hear about old school, kind of before times politics. There's no going back. There's only going forward. And going forward means revolutionary change. It means abolition of systems. So let's pick it up there next time. All right, that's it for today. Thanks for listening. This and all other episodes can be heard at the website, charlesburcell.com, or of course on your favorite podcast platform. Follow on Substack and Blue Sky. Thanks to our flagship terrestrial station, River West Radio in Milwaukee. Peter Donalds wrote and performed our theme song. All right, I love you. I'll see you out there.